There's a certain sense of irony. I kind of exposed myself a little bit just before, like when I first did my young adults years here in Dunedin, I didn't do it the way that I wanted to, and the way that I think God called me to. And I think there's a certain sense of irony now that I find myself in Dunedin again, doing exactly the same thing that I needed to do myself. But I'm now a 44-year-old man. Yes, no, I thought I did the math wrong. I'm now a 44-year-old man. There's something different between a 44-year-old person who's trying to stand in the gap for a generation versus an 18 to 25-year-old. Does that make sense? And so the thing is that for you guys are part of this generation. I am as well, because I'm still alive. Hallelujah. But the thing is that you're uniquely crafted to impact your world for God and for good. Like you're placed, you're purposed here in Dunedin for a reason and for this season. All right. My whole life I kind of felt like I was on the outside looking in. But actually, what I've realised is that God needs gap fillers. God needs people that are willing to stand in the gap. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. The theme for tonight that Tom asked me to talk about was talking about stepping out. I'm an evangelist that's what I'm ordained in. But actually all it really means is starting a conversation and continuing a conversation over time. I'm not a deep theologist, so apologies to any theology students in the house. I just basically try and start a conversation and try to continue it. There's a couple of things that I wanted to talk about, and I'll talk about it a little bit in the context of Red Frogs, but actually for the most part I just wanted to talk in general, because not everyone's going to do frogs as a ministry, and that's actually okay. But I just wanted to start off with it. It's not a coincidence that you're here for this season in this place. You don't have to wait until you're outside of Dunedin to start outworking the call of God that's on your life. There's actually a seasonal call of God for you, for here, now, today. Now, my context in Red Frogs, that looks like vomit catching. That looks like setting up tents down Castle Street and some of the craziest spaces where people literally travel from all around New Zealand just to be in the environment. Hyde Street, St. Patrick's Day, hanging out on a random hill where half of Lincoln University come to hang out. Why would you do it? Why would you put yourself in those spaces? And it actually comes back to what Dominic mentioned, that Ezekiel 22:30. So this is God looking for someone that was willing to stand in the wall had been broken down. That was the context of what had happened. And God was looking for someone that was willing to stand in the gap of the wall so that there would be protection for the city. Back in those days, if you had a city without walls, you had a problem. If you had walls with a hole in them, also a problem. It's not a particularly effective wall. All right? And so one of the things, the way that I wanted to frame what I wanted to share today was around Ezekiel 22:30. I looked for someone among them who would build up the wall and stand before me in the gap on behalf of the land so I would not have to destroy it. But I found no one. A dictionary defines standing in the gap. Here's my $40,000 linguistics degree. Just paid off that student loan. Standing in the gap is to expose oneself, to make yourself vulnerable for the protection of others, to take the place of a fallen defender or supporter. There's Scripture shares heaps of numerous examples of people willing to stand in the gap for a generation. Moses was that person. David was that person. Joshua was that person. Funnily enough, Jesus was that person. And so the question, I'm a question asker, because then I don't have to prepare as much well-researched material, so I'm just going to ask you some questions, and hopefully that's challenging. So here's my first question. Are you willing to stand in the gap for a generation? You're in Dunedin at the moment, so your generation is the students of Dunedin. Are you willing to stand in a gap for that generation? See, at the moment here, in Dunedin, we've got a generation of our future leaders, teachers, pastors, lawyers, ecology people, phlebotomists, theologists. It's as many ists as I know right now. So what would it look like if there was a generation of Christians who are willing to step out and stand in the gap? And I've got these three pictures for you. The first one is the wall, like I said. Now, if you're willing to stand in the wall, what happens? Who's seen Lord of the Rings before? One of my favourite parts, the wall Helm's Deep wall gets blown up. There's this massive big hole, and then there's this big rush of supporters that fill the gap with their bodies, literally willing to put their lives on the line in order to protect everything that the city stands for. Dunedin's a city with holes. There's holes in our culture. There's holes post-COVID. There's holes in people's hearts. Are you willing to stand in the gap and protect the people? The second picture that I had was around a rugby wall, right? So any I think I might have the wrong crowd here. Anyone like rugby? Okay, I've got some hands, completely misread the situation. One of the things, I'm a prop, I've always been a prop, I've been a really good gap filler practically when it comes to rugby. I fill holes, not fast, but I do it. And so one of the things that happens is that when people get tackled right, what you do is you step over, you protect, and then people come around you and form a defensive line so that the enemy, the opposition, can't come through. Now, from this verse here, that's a picture for us as well, right? Is that we're protecting those that have, we're literally standing on those that came before, against the enemy that's not people, just by the way. It's not flesh and blood that we fight against, but powers and principalities. We're protecting the people behind us, and we're standing shoulder to shoulder with people that are also willing to stand in the gap. That's the second picture. The third picture is a biblical picture as well, which is a shepherd who literally sleeps in the hole so that he can protect the sheep. That's what it means to stand in the gap. Now, when it comes to one of the things that when I was a young boy, carry on. Okay, no. Sometimes we wait to be chosen in order to go on mission. We think that there needs to be some sort of but the thing is that we actually just need to recognise where there are gaps. We actually need to recognise where there are messes in our world, where there are messes in our society, and being willing to use what we have to help fill those gaps. What I've written down here is pick me culture versus send me, I'll go culture. A lot of the time as Christians, we wait to be picked. We think that there's some sort of magical process that we go through known as calling. And yes, I do believe that there are calls. But actually, we wait for this magical moment before we're willing to serve a generation. There's a big difference between pick me culture versus send me, I'll go culture. Don't wait to be picked. Don't wait till your third year of university to be willing to stand in the gap for a generation. Don't wait till your third year of university to be willing to go on mission in your local context. You have a mission field. If you're called to do missions, congratulations, there's 30,000 people. A block in any direction that are hurting, that are hopeless, that need what you carry. And so there's this process that we go through, right? And in Isaiah 6, verse 5 to 8, it's actually the call of Isaiah, which is otherwise known as Isaiah says no, 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 and then finally yes. Now, we could pick other parts of the Bible. Moses says no, 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 finally yes. Abraham says no, 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 finally yes. David says just send me back to the sheep. Samson says cut off my hair. All right? There's this process of these people that are sort of like these reluctant heroes, right? Well, this is Isaiah's story, right? When he's called to be a prophet, to send a message to God's people. And Isaiah's first reaction is Isaiah 6 verse 5, woe to me, I cried, I am ruined, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips. And my eyes have seen the King, the Lord Almighty. Look, we can disqualify ourselves. We can always find an excuse why we shouldn't step out, why we shouldn't go on mission. But actually the great thing is that there's this redemption process that takes place when we actually allow ourselves to come under the authority of God. when we accept Jesus into our lives, there's this redemption process that takes place. We can disqualify ourselves, we can find an excuse. It goes on in verse 6, then one of the seraphim flew with me. So seraphim's just a word for really, really freaky looking angel. Flew to me with a live coal in his hand, which he had taken with tongs from the altar. He took it with his tongue, that's weird. He'd taken with tongs from the altar. With it he touched my mouth and said, see, this has touched your lips, your guilt is taken away and your sin atoned for. If you're feeling unclean, if you're a person with unclean lips, the great thing is you're in a great environment to be cleaned. This is a great environment. This is a faith-filled environment. You could leave this place tonight completely different to the way that you came in. You could leave this place without guilt. You could leave this place without shame. You could leave this place ready to be sent out. Part of the process of following Jesus, being followers of the way, is to be set apart. Which is not, it's not like put yourself away like a monastic order. It's literally, you've been set aside for a purpose. So in addition to what you're studying at the moment, you also have a call related to the call of God on your life. And actually, to be fair, it's probably related to your passion and your purpose anyway. Your passion's married to your purpose. I don't even know how many different types are, how many different degrees are here, how many different subjects are represented, what campuses that you're from, what halls that you're from. But actually, even with these people in this room here right now, we cover a shockingly wide cross-section of Dunedin. And so there's this thing that happens, there's this call that comes out, right? So first of all, I'm unclean. You're cleaned. Then you're sent. But there's actually two parts to a call. It's not just God says, do this, and there's no option. This is actually key. Listen to this. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send, and who will go for us? That's not Jocelyn, I want you to go. That's not Dominic, I want you to go. That's not Tom, I want you to go. What that's saying is, hey, who's willing? Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? That's an invitation. That's a call to action. There's an invitation there. And in a very Anglican and slightly Presbyterian and sometimes Catholic way as well, there's actually a response to that call. There's a call and response there. Isaiah says, and I said, here I am, send me. That's not a dig at all. We think that we need to have this magical call, but actually there's a call and a response. There's going to be heaps of opportunities where God goes, hey, I need some people to stand in this gap. And then it's up to us to decide whether we go yes to that or no to that or not yet to that or how we choose to respond. But when it comes to frog stuff, here's a couple of lessons. One of my convictions is I cannot and shall not and will not do nothing for my generation. I'm outworking the call of God on my life at 44 because I missed the call of God on my life at 18 to 24, but the call is still the call. Does that make sense? You won't get it right, and that's actually okay, just go again. If you fall over, someone else is going to stand over you and cover you and pick you up, and then just go again when you're ready to go. Each day, it says, pick up your cross daily. So each day, you can choose to respond to the call of God. God doesn't call us to do everything, but we need to do something. Do what you can, where you can, for who you can. For some of us in Frog's World, that looks like not all of us are yarners. Just out of interest in Frog's World, extroverts win in the short term in Frog's World, introverts win in the long term. Extroverts, party starters, let's go! By the third time, fourth time, fifth time in the hall, the introverts, man, they're pairing off with people, having deep conversations. It's the introverts that people get asked advice. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Okay, it's something different. Saying we are willing, being willing and available does something within us. You'll start to notice more opportunities. It positions us to be moved. So, here we go. Are you ready? When it comes to being called on mission, There's this process. Here's a process. It's a two-step process, very difficult. Ask yourself, what is God calling me to do? Step 1. What is God calling me to do? Step 2, do it. If you don't get to step 2, refer back to step 1 again. Some of us are waiting for this thing that God's called us to do, but actually He's told us what He wants us to do and we just haven't done it. If you don't know, there's actually standard operating procedures for God. If you don't know what else to do, love God, love others. If you want to be real fancy, go out into all the world, share the gospel with whoever cares, and even if they don't, and let them respond. Start a conversation rather than winning an argument. That's evangelism in action. If you don't know what to do, if you're not at that point where you can share in that way, just serve people. Love people. Serving leads to relationship. Relationship leads to an opportunity to share. In Frog's World, I don't go up to the first person in the hall and go, hey, do you know about Jesus? Because actually, I don't have the money or the authority to do that. And actually, why would they listen to some random middle-aged dude? But you hang out with someone and you journey with someone for weeks, months, you serve them. There's hundreds of people that we serve in Frog's World, and out of those hundreds of people, there's ones that we're called to connect with. It's really super simple. We overcomplicate it sometimes. Become friends with people, and they'll start asking you questions about why you are the way you are. Hopefully that's in a positive way. I don't always get that in a positive way. Why are you the way that you are? People don't care about what you know until they know that you care. Now, you might feel unequipped. In the Bible, time and again, we don't see people who are gifted, or we don't see people who are gifted or capable. And in fact, people that were gifted and capable are sometimes cautionary tales. We see people who were willing and made themselves available. I love students, like Tom, this is such a great environment and it's unlike anything else in Dunedin. Thank God that this isn't equipped as Dunedin. We freak people out. Like walk in, wall of noise, big lights, not for everybody. Not for me, a lot of the time. You might feel unequipped. But willingness is more important than capability and gifting. Just being willing to give it a crack. I'm not a natural preacher. In fact, it's one of my least favourite things to do. But I'll give it a crack because crack. Did I say crack? I hope I said crack. I'll give it a crack because I know that God can take what's in my hand and He'll use it for good. Right? See, the thing is that you see these people who are willing and who are available, and God equipped them and was with them, but He didn't always fully equip them. Do you notice that the disciples were sent out before they were really ready? They did 3 years of failed ministry, and then Jesus said, cool, you're in charge, I'm out, peace. That's the Pentecostal version of that story. Put a Yamaha, should have put a Honda. Okay, moving on. There was some preparation, and it's weird what God will use. That what God will use is probably what you're willing to give. There was some preparation, but people were never fully prepared for the call on their lives, for what they were called to do. There's a call on your life, and you shouldn't wait to be ready to start outworking that. Don't wait to arrive at a certain milestone or achievement before you start outworking the call of God on your life. Don't wait until you complete uni. Don't wait until you get married. Don't wait until you're not in Dunedin. How many of us in third year are like, man, I can't wait until I'm not in Dunedin? To start outworking your call, there's a call for you here, now, today. So here's 3 questions, just really quick, to help define your calling. First one, what need do you see? What do you see? If you want to be super spiritual about it, just go, God, what do you want me to see? What perspective do you want me to have? See, as frogs, we saw Castle Street and realised that we couldn't not do something about that. Castle Street was a heart, like it's the heart of the uni, right? It's the heart of student culture. So we had to walk towards that mess. Castle Street only came about because of COVID. So the fact that we set up on Castle Street outside the dairy flat and serve hundreds and thousands of young people every single year only came out because they weren't able to have us in events anymore. Like OUSA weren't able to have us in events anymore. So we made a joke. Oh, well, we'll just go for Castle Street. They need us more anyway. And I laughed. And OUSA laughed. And then I stopped laughing. And then OUSA stopped laughing. And then we went down Castle Street. So what do you see? Where has God put your attention? It's probably something that he's asking you to start moving towards. Second question, what's on your heart? There's actually a hardwired call on your life. On my worst day, I'm still going to be Pastor Ray. I'm still going to be Father Ray. That's just who I am. That's it. On my worst day, I'll still care for people. I'll still get alongside people. See, David, on David's heart, he had a heart for worship and he had a heart to serve. But he also followed the instructions of God. Now, just to be very clear, David didn't get it all right in areas of his life. Like, he messed up real big to the point that it was a large part, and yet he was still known as a man after God's own heart. Like, he messed up real big. Murder. No, but like legit. But he fought, he was strong and courageous. He did what God called him to do. So there's going to be certain parts of your calling that you're actually hardwired for. It's in your DNA. You can't help but do it. And that'll come as you start to outwork your calling. You'll try different things. You'll serve vision and other people's vision and other people's callings and stuff. And then eventually you'll be like, man, this is where God's caused me to fit. This is where he's caused me to outwork. And this is what I want to do with the rest of my life. But also, so first one, what do you see? Second one, what's on your heart? But also, what's in your hand? What have you got now? What are you willing to give? See, Moses was just a dude with a stick and a stutter. David had a sling and stones. A red frogger, we've got pancakes, a cup of water, a lolly, and a vomit bag. And if we're really lucky, it happens in that order. We're a kind word and we're a caring shoulder. But more than that, every cup of water represents care, it represents love, it represents compassion, it represents the Spirit of the living God. This is who God is. This is how God operates. We have lifelong callings, and some of you already know what you want to do with your life, but actually you've also got seasonal callings as well. In and amongst my mess when I was at Dunedin, there was also other amazing things, like God still moved through that. You just have to be obedient. You have authority when you come under authority. You need to be brave enough to go, God, where do you want me to stand? What gap do you want me to stand in? Do you know what? If you can do it in your own strength, you don't need God. And I don't know how is a holy posture. 2 Peter 1 verse 3 says, his divine power has given us everything we need for life and godliness through our knowledge, who has called us by his own glory and goodness. So, just trust that you'll be in the right place at the right time. Trust God that he's going to put you in those spaces that you need to be. Pray for boldness that you'll be willing and courageous to step out in those ways. But don't wait. Don't wait. You don't have to wait. There's a well within you. To put it somewhere else in a slightly less spiritual way, what you carry, the students of Dunedin need. You have what other people need. I've written it down here as for someone, from a Pentecostal point of view, I'd say it's prophetic, but it could be pathetic, I don't know. But there's a well within you. What you have, the students of Dunedin need. So don't poison it with your words, your attitudes, or your decisions. Don't have an attitude of I can't. Don't discredit what God says about you with what you say. Don't discredit what God says about you with what you say about you. There's a well within you. There's a move of God within you. You carry a move of God within you. Sounds crazy, right? You just need to have enough space and be willing to outwork it. It's an outrageous statement, but it's true. And so, where are you going to place yourself? Philippians 2:13 says, "For God is working in you, giving you the desire and the power to do what pleases Him." You bring power, you bring peace, you bring reconciliation. Why? Because of who you carry. So, I believe God is asking, are you willing to stand in the gap for a generation? We're talking about the red frogs way, but it's not really. What it is God calls us to stand in the gap. He calls us to actually to be leaders for our generation. He calls us to serve our generation. He calls us to save our generation. And so are you willing to stand in the gap? Are you willing to walk towards the mess? So when God asks, who will go for us and whom shall we send? My hope and my prayer for you guys tonight is that ask yourself, how will you answer? My hope for you is that you'd say, send me, I'll go. I'll pass it back to Tom.
Let's pray. Let's pray. And as we do, I just want you to hold what you're left with after that. What do you see? What are you hearing from God? What's in your hands? How are you going to respond to such a call, to such an invitation? God, we thank you that you passionately desire to lead us into all that you've called us to respond to this great call, to be a part of your mission, to serve, to give. And we give ourselves, Lord, we want to say yes. We want to say yes, Lord, here we are, the fullness of our being, the good and the bad, all mixed in. Here we are, Lord.